may be a month later. My schedule is always off, regardless. But we've got an NBA draft show to do, and God, does it feel good to be normal. I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
I'm Jay Kaplan.
And I'm Anthony Strait.
Let's go. It's the OTSL Draft Night 2021 special. So if you were to ask what is the NBA's true favorite time of the year besides the playoffs, it's off-season time. Hot stove league, baby. And it starts with the NBA draft from a little place called Barclays Center going on. We'll cover all things local and national draft-wise on this show, and we'll dip our little toes into free agency as it starts next week. In other words, we're all on the clock. I've never been on the clock, guys. This is amazing. All right. But now let's talk about the team who was truly on the clock for about a month before tonight, and that was the Detroit Pistons. They took Cade Cunningham. So shooting guard, Oklahoma State at number 1. And Jay, Cunningham is illogically excited to be a Piston. Does anybody know this is not 1980? Anyway, have they found a franchise player in Cunningham?
Yeah, I mean, come on, guys. This is the Captain Obvious no-brainer pick. I mean, Cunningham checks all the boxes for a legit NBA starter with lead guard ball and passing skills, coupled with wing player scoring skills. Came into his one and only college season as the presumptive overall number 1 pick. Did nothing he did in leading Oklahoma to a 21-9 record and a run to the round of 32 in the NCAAs has changed that. 20 points per game, 6.2 boards, and 3.5 assists. His assist to turnover ratio is on the negative side. It's a little concerning, not a deal breaker. 43.8% from the floor, even 40% from 3, almost 85% from the line, all solid. 1.6 steals. That's evidence of his ability to play the passing lanes on defense. Scouting report him is why most folks have him as the only NBA star in the making on their draft boards. He's a good creative ball handler, does a terrific job with setup moves to get away from his man on ball. Great tempo and patience. Passing was actually his best skill set coming in to college. I think the low assists per game is largely having to do to carry the offensive load. He sees the floor well. He's unselfish, even as a number 1 offensive option. If you watch his high school tape, you'll see him whipping, one-handed live dribble passes, cross corner kicks. And this is a guy who profiles not just as a scorer, but a true shot creator is going to run an efficient offense. He's got a great feel for when to go for his own and when to get his teammates involved. Good shooter off the catch. Almost 65% effective field goal percentage on that. You can play him on the ball as a point guard. You can play him off the ball as a 2 guard. You can play him at the 3. He finishes well at the rim and in half court. Genuine plus defender when he does lock down, especially late in games. Great rotational instincts to play in a team defensive construct, uses his length well to get into the passing lanes, rotates well. This is the guy who, and if you look at, here's the big thing, guys, arguably the most clutch player in college basketball last year. That translates to me to an NBA level. He wants the ball in those situations. One of the more complete prospects to come through the draft in a while. Not too many holes in his game. Scores at all 3 levels. Defends at a high level. He's high character. The worst case scenario for this guy, he's a high-level wing creator, can shoot, make good passing reads, and defends. You can, here's my thing. There aren't a ton of guys who can stop him in the NBA. So I think his upside is legitimate being a top 5 player in the league at some point, given how complete his game is. Like I said, Captain Obvious pick. It's a no-brainer.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Cunningham is, again, and we mentioned this word, and we're going to mention this a lot tonight, positionless. And that's what you need in NBA. You need to play at least 2 to 3 positions, and Cunningham really does the trick. I think what you saw in Oklahoma State is just the surface of what you're going to see in the NBA, and I think he is a team leader, and I think he's going to bring the Pistons some good things. May not be now, but it will be in the near future. Yeah. Guys, let's talk about the 2 spot. The team that misses James Harden more than anyone ever should in the Houston Rockets. Fun fact, picking in the first round since first time picking in round 1 since 2015. And the first time they're picking in the top 5 since 2002 when a little man known as Yao Ming came over to Houston. They went also and took a shooting guard in Jalen Green, who went to the college of screw you, I'm getting paid, also known as the G League Unite. Anthony, thoughts on the second best Jalen in this draft?
Yeah, you know what it is that the Houston Rockets are in a situation where they had to go best player available on a team that just doesn't have a foundation right now. You saw what happened the last 12 months. Westbrook is gone. Harden pretty much eats himself out of Houston. They try to get some pieces back. John Wall doesn't work out. The Rockets' Cousins is let go. So they go with the next best guy, and it's Jalen Green. You know, he's full of athleticism, the inaugural pick of the GE Ignite team. And look, he comes with a resume a mile long. Think about this. Gold medals at the 2017 FIBA Under-16 American Championship, 2018 FIBA Under-17 World Championship, 2019 FIBA Under-19 World Championship. And he's supposed to pick in the G League Ignite team, average 17.9 points a game, a little over 4 rebounds, 2.8 assists a game, playing for former NBA player Brian Shaw. Mm-hmm. So obviously he comes in, you can make the argument that he's probably the most NBA ready player to come into the draft, particularly in the top 5. We consider that he's basically played in an NBA style offense all ready for a season. We saw that last year with LaMelo Ball playing overseas internationally and being already kind of stepping into play already toughened for the NBA. Like he's 6'6", 178 wireframe, 6'7" wingspan, very athleticism, good size for a shooting guard. If there's anything that he needs to work on, it's his defense. He's in a low percentile defensively that needs some improvement, but he can play on and off the ball, and particularly with the Ignite team, he played with a couple of veteran players, particularly Jared Jack, who was a really good NBA veteran guard that any young player can learn from. The Houston Rockets right now is in a position where they just have to rebuild. They need somebody. They need something to get the organization jump started again. After think about this organization from where they were just 3 years ago, one game away from an NBA title, to now completely building from the ground up. And Jalen Green, I don't know if he's the foundation, but he's definitely a good foundation piece for Houston moving forward. And you know what? He's going to be a highlight reel. You're going to see him a lot on SportsCenter because this guy can flat out ball. And like I said, he's one of the most athletically gifted players in this draft.
You can't. So here's the thing, and we'll talk about his G League Ignite teammate in a minute. Green's not a good defender, but good God, his offensive set skill is one of the best in the NBA. And I can see this guy scoring 20 to 25 points a game. I don't know if I can see this guy scoring 20 to 25 points a game for a NBA title contender, but I could definitely see him being somebody who you can sell tickets, who can be very good shooting. He takes a lot of risks, which is a good thing and a bad thing because it means you're very more susceptible to getting stolen the ball. And I love this pick. You can't go wrong with the 2 pick because there's just so many studs in this portion of the draft that the 2 pick is basically like having your pick of the prettiest cats in the litter, although the nicest cat has already gone to a really good home. All right. I don't know if that's the greatest example. Evan Mobley is pick number 3. I have him. He went to the Cavs. He is a forward. He is a center. But most importantly, he's 7 goddamn feet, and he is a defensive wizard. He was very good when it is only 1 year at USC. Monster defensive prospect. I could easily see him being an all-defense player within the next 5 to 6 years, maybe even earlier than that. Pairing him with Jared Allen is going to make this team one of the best defensive teams in the league. They were right up there last year for a while, too. Their offense is still, he doesn't foul. He only averaged 2.1 fouls per 40 minutes. Reminds me a lot of DeAndre Ayton, who we saw do some good things in the playoffs this year. He works very well. He can easily guard the pick and roll on defense. And he can use his shots good. He takes 18% of his shots out of pick and rolls, 15% out of post-ups, 9% out of transition. He's not going to pull a Giannis and shoot a 3 at a ridiculously early time of the game. He wants to score in the paint. He can handle the ball. Don't know if his strength is there. He is 7 feet, but he is 215 pounds. That's a little lanky for today's NBA at that spot. But I see, and if you put him up against a guy like Nikola Jokic or Joel Embiid, he's dead in the water. But pair him with Allen, and you're going to see some good things here with this team. Again, I don't know where he fits on the championship contender, but as a centerpiece that, again, you can build around and sell tickets, which is what you need for these top 4 and 5 picks, he's perfect in the spot. I love the pick of Mobley. I think he is the second best player in this draft, and I think he goes to the right team at number 3.
Yeah, I can't argue with you on that, Rabbi. I mean, this is – I don't know if you call this guy a true 5, but I think he's, one of the most athletic and skilled big men in this draft. And you know what? Everybody says the game is changing, positionless. It's all about jacking up threes. But I tell you what, you come playoff time, you need a guy who can get you points in the paint, can defend the rim, can rebound, and help you space the floor with other guys around him. So I think this is a great pick. Do I think he needs to get a little stronger to bang at the NBA level? Yes. But you know what? With his work ethic, I can see him getting there. Excellent pick. Perfect fit for him in this.
You know what? With Evan Mobley's skill set, I'm looking at Team USA. I'm like, you know what? You can use this guy for low post scoring because you definitely need anybody who can get you some easy points down the paint. But you know what? I got a chance to see Mobley. Obviously, you watched him the college basketball preview show. I was obviously Pac-10, Big 12 heavy guy between USC and Baylor last year, following those 2 teams. But Mobley's a great pick. I think pairing him with Allen, that's going to help them definitely defensively. But you also got to think about this. This thing got Colin Sexton on the team too, who's going to be able to really create and generate some offense with both guys. Allen's a great lob pass guy, and Mobley is a great pick and roll player. So the Cavs, I think they're still a couple years away from being a legitimate playoff contender. But they're definitely going to be a fun offensive heavy team to watch.
I'm very interested to see that team in the next few years. All right. We're going to go local real quick, and then we'll get back to the rest of the lottery. But the New York Knicks, who for many years finish in the bottom of the league and usually give away their first round pick for peanuts and or Steve Francis, have 2 things going for them. 3 of the first 32 picks and no lottery spots. The Knicks will pick 19, 21, and 32 in this draft. How can the Knicks make those little improvements to a 41 and 31 campaign this past season that included a coach of the year for Tom Thibodeau and an MIP, only because I don't want to write out the words most improved player on my script, for Julius Randle? We're going to look at each pick separately. Jay, who should be the pick at 19?
The pick at 19 for me is a guy that I like a lot, and that's Chris Duarte, who's the senior guard out of Oregon, 6'6", 190, 6'7" wingspan. Now, is it possible he's off the board when the Knicks draft at 19? Yeah, he's been mocked to Golden State at 17, potentially.
You're lucky we got to this pick before he got off of the board.
I'm telling you, I'll tell you what, though, if he actually falls to the Knicks at 19, to me, he's a great fit for a Tom Thibodeau team. I know, like, he's 24 years old, and a lot of people knock that on him, but to me, he's the most NBA-ready player in the draft, meaning he can step in and be a rotation player from jump. 17 points, 4.6 boards, 2.7 assists, almost 2 steals. Shot 53% from the floor, legitimate 42% from beyond the arc, 81% at the line. He's got solid size. He's mature, knows what he's doing, has a professional mindset. This guy doesn't make errors, doesn't go out of his comfort zone, but his comfort zone's pretty pretty wide. Had solid shooting numbers last year, both on catch and shoot jumpers and on, pull-up jumpers, which are what you're going to see a lot of him taking in the NBA. On-ball scoring threat. The guy can play a little bully ball to get to the mid-range area and make shots over the top. He's also good with that pull-up off a ball screen if the defender goes under. If you drop coverage him or you switch a big onto him, he's got moves to counter both of those. He has a step-back pull-up 3 that's pretty lethal. I like him really. I really like this kid. Moves well without the ball to set up for a jumper. Smart at drifting out to the corner. Reads screens well, comes off to get open. They use flare screens a lot at Oregon, and they do that in the NBA. So he's got a pre-set of packages that can be used for him. Finished at almost 63% at the rim. Knows how to finish to protect the ball. I like the fact that, his ability on defense is what's going to win him over for Thibodeau if he's there. Superb team defender. He doesn't miss rotations, closes out well, active hands in the passing lanes. constantly looking around to see what's going on around him. He reads ball handlers and cutters really well. Doesn't quit when he has to recover. Solid weak side protector for a guy his size. Everything he does, guys, is tailor-made for the next level. And I think, he doesn't necessarily have a ton of upside because he isn't, a true playmaker, but what he does successfully is about as good as it gets for slotting into a role early in his NBA career. Like I said, his age at 24 doesn't bother me as much as some other people. I think he's going to step in day one and be a contributor if he fits the right spot for the right team. To me, that is the Knicks. He may never be a star, but it wouldn't surprise me, guys, if 10 years from now, we see that this kid is still around helping teams win ball games.
Only in the NBA would being an experienced older player who actually knows systems at 24 would be considered a big problem. Anyway, let's move on. Anthony, pick 21 for the Knicks. Who you got?
I think the Knicks should go guard because I feel like 19. I think a big would be a good idea considering they're not going to have Nolan Stillwell back next season. He's gone as far as free agency, and you don't know what's going to happen. Mitchell Robinson coming back from an injury, and he's already injury prone. But at guard, I would like to see Ayo Dosunmu come to New York. Like I watched this kid in the NCAA tournament and the Big Ten tournament. He literally fits with a kind of guy that Tom Thibodeau would love to have on his roster. You think about 20 points a game, 6 rebounds a game, 5.3 assists for the University of Illinois, led them to a 1 seed in the NCAA tournament, conscious All-American first team honors in the process, 6'4", 200-pound frame, 6'8" wingspan. What I love about this kid is that he is absolutely aggressive. He's not afraid to take shots. In a half-court game, he will go downhill. He's not afraid to drive, get to the basket. On pick and rolls, he's very decisive with the ball. He has improved tremendously through his couple of years as a passer. And you think about what happened with the Knicks in that playoff series against Atlanta. Too many guys that just cannot create their own shots or just indecisive when they had the chance to take an open shot, particularly in the games down in Atlanta when they had an opportunity to take the shot and made one pass too many in a half-court game. Now you get the Sumo who come in. He can create his own shot in the half-court, particularly with the shot clock winding down. He can create for himself. RJ Barrett and Julius Randle can play off of him. I feel like those are two guys that are finishers more than guys who are playmakers. And Dosunmu comes in with 45% of his shots in the half-court game on mid-range or pull-ups and floaters. This is a guy who can absolutely break down a defense. And on the defensive end, he fights through screens. He's tough. He's gritty. He has everything that Tom Thibodeau wants out of his guys. And trust me, he is a kid that Knicks fans will fall in love with almost immediately. You think about, I look at him coming off the bench maybe, or maybe being a spot starter and playing alongside Emmanuel quickly and setting him up for 3-pointers from outside because he's that good of a playmaker. I feel like this is the direction the Knicks need. They need a guard. They need a guard who can play both shooting and point guard. Dosunmu can play both because of his size and his skill. And also you need a playmaker. And Dosunmu brings all three of those. And he's a much improved defensive player. I would love to see the Knicks go in this direction if he's available at number 21. It's not a stretch. By no means imagination. No. You're adding him to a team that just making playoffs that need more pieces. They're not ready to be a title contender just yet. I feel like him and maybe a good versatile big would be a step in the right direction for a team that, you know what, for the first time, it feels good. We don't see them drafted in the first 10, in the top 10 pick for a change.
Yeah. What's interesting, though, Rabbi, is that, neither my pick nor Anthony's pick solves the Knicks' long-term need at point guard, because we know as much of a renaissance as Derrick Rose had this season, and we talked about it on the show, he's getting up there in years. He ain't going to be around forever.
Considering the Knicks' luck with point guards in the draft, I think they're best suited for depth in this draft, and I think that's why I think they should keep all three of these picks. I'm going to go with someone who I honestly, for 32, I don't think will be there. But I'm going to hope to God that Trey Murphy is there for Virginia. He is the perimeter. First of all, I'm very appreciative that the three of us have actually picked guys who have college pedigrees. I am very happy for that.
Yeah.
Even though he went to Rice his first 2 years, he went to Virginia. He transferred to Virginia this year, and he can shoot. He is one of the best shooters in this class. 40% from his career from three, has done it 500 times. So it's not a fluke, and the ACC is no joke, as Jay will definitely tell you. He shot 50% field goals total this year. He is a perfect 3-and-D guy. He is the type of guy who you were looking for in this league. He can close out quick. He knows what his position is. He can guard one of your best defenders, and he is consistently in the right spots. I love this pick. If it happens again, I swear to God, you can't mess up on a guy who you should not pass on, a guy who basically qualifies to be in the NBA right now easily, because he has some of the basic skills you need to be a 15 to 20 minute guy in the NBA. He doesn't do a lot when he has the ball. He has to play off of the ball. But again, that's perfectly fine, because as we know, the Knicks love to play off of the ball, especially getting those 3-point shots. You saw it happen with Reggie Bullock last year. He did wonders in that spot. I think as a wing guy, you can't go wrong with Trey Murphy at this pick. And we've seen good players from good schools fall down the draft board before. That's why all three of these players we want them, because again, we saw what they've done already, and we saw what they've done already against elite competition. And I'm not talking about G League elite competition. No. I'm talking about elite competition in college. And that's why I think
Rabbi, and this is the thing. I don't understand why, people are down on guys who actually, to me, you want a guy who's played against elite level competition. You got Asumu coming out of the Big Ten. You've got Murphy coming out of the ACC. Duarte playing for Oregon, which has been the class of the Pac-12 for a while. And the Pac-12 was vastly underrated last year as a league, as bore out by their success in the NCAA tournament. So it'll be interesting to see. And you bring up Reggie Bullock, Rabbi. The Knicks need another guy like that, because you saw how Bullock got worn out and they didn't have someone else to fill that same role. So if that pick is there, the Knicks have to come away from this draft, I think, with at least one 3-and-D type of guy, somebody who can be up on
they need two rotation, and they need two rotation guys.
Yeah,
if they don't get two
picks are there too. Yeah.
If they have to get at least two rotation guys out of these three. They don't have a star in this spot, but they need rotation guys. That star, hopefully, they can finagle in free agency. We'll talk about that later on. All right. Rewind. Let's go back to the rest of the lottery. Who did the best of picks 4 through 14? Who did the worst? What's the most intriguing of these picks? Let's get to the power of positivity pick. Who did the best, Jay?
I've been a fan of Jalen Suggs, watching him play for Gonzaga all of last year. To me, I thought no matter where this guy goes, he's going to fit in, because that's just who he is. Most mock drafts had Scotty Barnes going to Orlando at 5, and it's likely because most of those same drafts had Suggs going to the Raptors at 4. But I felt that no matter where Suggs went, he'd be a good fit. To me, he's an upgrade over both Markelle Fultz and Cole Anthony at the point guard spot. But you wonder, did Orlando take him because they've soured on either Fultz or Anthony, or is it because they're a team in full teardown mode? So, you take the best available talent and worry about the idealness of the fit later, thinking, well, you know what? If he does, you try and make a deal that includes Fultz or Anthony. Now, this is a guy who averaged 14 points, a little over 5 boards, 4.5 assists, almost 2 steals, shot 50% from the floor. Not a great 3-point shooter, a little under 34%, 76% from the stripe. But he's got ideal size for a lead guard. He's an explosive athlete, great first step. Great quickness, allows him to blow past the first line of defenders. And once he does that, he has a rare ability to transition that speed into power in the way that he absorbs contact and gets up to the basket. And Rabbi, good thing we got the Knicks pick done, because Duarte just went off the board to
That's exactly what I was going to say. Wow. Thank God we moved this around, because
like I said, I didn't think we hoped, but it happens. Here's the thing about Suggs. The guy plays an attack-oriented brand of basketball while maintaining control. He's a fearless driver, but he's also patient while waiting for defenders to react. He pressures the defense with real speed. He's got good change of pace moves, and he can generate downhill force from standstill, coming directly off a ball screen. Provides constant pressure out in transition. Scored about 36% of his points out in transition. He can grab and go with decisiveness and try to force the issue. He is literally a one-man fast break. He finishes at the rim, 56.4% of his shots. Takes over 3 shots per game there. Also took nearly 3 shots per game at the rim. So he gets a lot out in transition, gets a lot at the rim. He draws fouls in games where he takes over. Took under 4 free throws per game, but showed some upside there when the moment called for it. Didn't necessarily need to, considering how good Gonzaga was last year. Great out of ball screens in the half court, can create out of isolation as well. Understands how to use his athleticism to his advantage. Flies around screens to drive into the paint. Knows how to keep the defender on his hip while looking around and diagnosing where to put the ball. Really uses the hard jab step well, knowing that defenses have to account for his quickness. He knows how to freeze defenders, then go to his step back. He's comfortable pulling up for a 3 behind a ball screen. Left hand or right-handed with the pull-up game, and that's key when you're a point guard in the NBA. Great passer out of ball screens. He's got great court vision, and he can hit just about any pass in the book. You saw those full-length cross, passes that he threw to his guys. That probably comes out of his background as a quarterback. Those one-handed home run passes to streaking teammates. This is also a guy who loves to jump stop in the paint and hit either a cross corner or cross wing kick out. Worked a lot. Did that a lot with Corey Kispert in these settings. Also worked a lot. Also dealing with Drew Timme coming out of ball screens with Timme as the roller. So he knows how to engage in the 2 passes that are also going to be something a point guard in the NBA is going to be doing most often based on how the pick and roll is such a primary offensive set. When he's engaged on defense, this dude's a monster defender, aggressive on ball, uses his strength, fights through screens, uses his quickness to slide and cut off opposing players, tremendous off-ball defensive IQ, gets into the passing lanes, gets deflections, gets steals, and rotationally, he's really good as a scramble defender. But guys, we know there are a few things more valuable in the NBA than a lead guard creator. Suggs has the potential to be that given his athleticism, power, vision, and basketball on IQ. Not easy to find players with this blend of tools who also have this much of a productive track record. This guy is a winner from high school to Gonzaga. He knows how to step up in a big way in the biggest moments. Those things are not too big for him. His vision is a real differentiator for me in terms of him being a prospect in addition to his ability to score. This guy profiles as an all-star caliber point guard if his development as a shooter continues to go in the right direction. I tell you what, I think this guy is the guy who, when the dust settles, is going to be the long-term point guard solution for the Orlando Magic.
I just don't like the fact that he doesn't have people to pass to, and that's something he had. And for a guy with no mid-range, kind of problem. Well, I think he would have been so. I think he would have. He has no mid-range. He's only took 17 mid-range shots in college, which is an abnormal amount, especially for college.
At the NBA level.
He can develop at the NBA level, but we're talking about right now.
Who did Orlando take at 8 again?
You know what? I'll finish this off as I go into my pick that I'm not too crazy about. But you know what? And we talked about in the pre-show meeting that I was going to keep an eye on to see what Orlando was going to do with the 2 picks in the top 10. Franz Wagner is a great pickup, by the way, at number 8, along with Suggs. So you do got a bit of a 1-2 combination, someone who can score, who can finish down the paint. And Wagner's a professional. I call him a pros pro. We saw that in Michigan. He's a pros pro and a gamer. Oklahoma City Thunder, for a team that has 6 picks in tonight's draft, between the first and second rounds, they have literally no bigs on their roster currently at the moment. They traded away Al Horford. They traded for Kemba Walker. and obviously size and rim protection was a constant need. So drafting Josh Giddey at number 6, I think it's a bit of a huge stretch. Call it Plastic Man DC Comics stretch at this point. Look, Josh Giddey, he played in the Australian League, National Basketball League down in Australia, 10 points a game. He's known as a tremendous passer. The rest of his offensive game is still kind of a work in progress. He's a great finisher around the basket, still needs to get a consistent jump shot. Defensively gives up a bit of a size, gives up some size. But then you look at the Thunder roster right now. You have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you have Kemba Walker, you have a lot of guard forwards on this team right now, and not enough. And you don't have any bigs. So I felt like size and rim protection was something that they probably should have gone for to start. Usman Garuba, I thought would have been a great fit. Even if that was a bit of a stretch to be that high, at least that stretches the team need. Look, the Thunder have got a lot of picks, but you got to start winning. You got to start showing something for these draft picks. And Giddey being so high, I feel like he would have been around. I mean, considering the Thunder have so many picks, I think Josh Giddey would have been around in the mid to late teens if they still wanted to go in that direction. But to pick him at number 6, not only does he have the pressure of being a top 10 pick, and he's still kind of in the developmental processing stage as far as his overall game goes. But now you put him on a team-heavy team. Well, we don't know if he's going to even crack the rotation. You know he's going to be a bench guy. You just don't know if he's going to be a 20 to 25 minute guy or a 10 to 15 minute guy that can spell some starter minutes. So I really think Oklahoma City right now, I think they dropped the ball with this number 6 pick.
By the way, I'm going to throw in a worse pick for me too. The Spurs picked Josh Primo at number 12. And as much as I liked as he did some stuff in college and he's got good shooting and has got a good all-around game, he can be a good rotational defender. Not the best guy from that team last year, can only really take shots, doesn't know how to really make a shot. It's just not the right spot. His on-ball defense is terrible, and I think he is a project pick. But of course, just him going to Pop is kind of a shock and a system that I don't think would work for him. I don't understand what they're doing either. Meanwhile, by the way, all Sam Presti would have to have done is just trade back. And we know Sam Presti loves getting picks that he may not ever use in the NBA draft. All right.
But by the way, Rob, I have to ask you, we talked about this before the show. What do you think of the Golden State Warriors pick of Jonathan Kuminga at number 7? I mean, I'm going to get into both of their picks now. I like one and I'm not so sure about the other, but we'll go in order. Don't like the Kuminga pick. Jonathan Kuminga we saw that there's a tier of the top 4 guys, and with Suggs being the other one who went at 5, obviously Mobley from USC, Green from the Ignite, and Cunningham, they were in the class by themselves. Jonathan Kuminga was in that class last year. He is somebody who has a long wingspan, has power, has speed, has length, has a lot of athleticism. He's a transition player. He gets downhill. He could be a two-way wing, something you really need in this league. But as Anthony was talking about earlier on how Jalen Green did pretty well against good competition in the G League, he did terrible. You saw in any of the G League games that the Ignite played, his consistency in his stance sucked. He stood around a lot. He fell asleep during games. When you see the line in a scouting report that falls asleep way too often, if that doesn't signal 7 red flags that come out of your computer and basically say you have to click them and say that there's viruses in your computer, you're not reading it correctly. He's still working on his overall craft. He is a wrong player. He doesn't pass well. He plays with aggression, but sometimes he will easily go in a 1-on-3 scenario when he shouldn't. He should have easily been picked over Green this year. But now you can say his upside may be good starter if he fulfills his potential. And I don't know if he could. This reminds me a lot of picking the guy with pure athleticism last year in James Wiseman instead of a guy who could create shots in LaMelo Ball. So I don't know what the Golden State Warriors are doing. However, with the 14th pick, they picked somebody who I would have picked much earlier in this draft and that we talked about,
how much we love guys who had great years in college. Moses Moody did, and Moses Moody is a very good pick at 14. He has a 7'1" wingspan. He plays the part of an NBA player. He has great shot making ability. I like a guy who knows what to take and when to take it. And he doesn't change his form. It looks the same. He does wonderful on catch and shoot threes. He only shot 35% last year, but it seemed like every time they went to him, he made a clutch three. His instincts are great. He knows how to draw fouls. He also knows how to play James Harden type ball a little bit. So hopefully they don't change the rules for him where he extends his arms and gets contact. He's active. He's not an amazingly great athlete. He doesn't have the build of being a great athlete at 6'6", 205. But I love Moses Moody, and I think he fits perfectly with the Warriors, which is why I'm not so really sure on what these two picks actually represented for the Warriors. They took two guys who could easily be rotation guys. They took the guy who is, you can roll 75,000 dice on Kuminga at number 6. He could be an all-star, but he could be gone in the league in 5 years. But I think Moses Moody is a rotation player for a long, long time to come.
Yeah, I mean, Rabbi, there's a prevailing opinion, amongst personnel guys in the NBA that he's one of the safer picks in the draft. A lot of people have him pegged as the classic 3-and-D guy. Maybe he needs a little more nasty in him, but that Arkansas team, had some solid players on him. Strong physical kid. He's a willing defender, something that not a lot of guys coming into the NBA as freshmen are. It'll be interesting to see how he shakes out.
Yeah, and he worked with a guy who plays pro style offenses all the time in Eric Musselman, and that's a guy who you can learn a lot from. I love the pick.
Yep.
Jumping around. Sorry about that. Let's go to the Nets.
Yep.
When you have Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving, there's little room to have a big draft pick. So number 27 in the first round seems just about right for this team. And after they traded away Landry Shamet to the Suns tonight, they'll also pick at number 29. So how will the Nets get even better and prepare for the 1,000 injuries and 5 Kyrie Irving sabbaticals that'll happen this season? Gentlemen, make your picks for the first round for the Nets. Jay, you have 27 of them?
No, Anthony has 27.
Anthony, you have 27. Go ahead.
I have 27. But first off, I know you watched the draft, but for those who aren't, there was a great moment with Terrence Clark family being obviously brought to the stage. The NBA drafting Clark has an official NBA member, obviously tragically passed away this past spring. And John Calipari actually alluded to that earlier this afternoon, how this would have been his night. But I thought this was a great moment, a great gesture by Adam Silver.
Great move.
I know it's a tough transition from one to another, but to get to the next pick at 27, I feel like they could go with Miles McBride. They need depth in the backcourt in the worst way. I mean, you think about the injuries to Kyrie Irving and the James Harden in that playoff series, and Joe Harris completely disappearing, and who was running the point was pretty much Kevin Durant in that net offense. It got to a point where we saw in Game 7, it felt like it was 1-on-5
and he almost won, which is the shocking thing about that.
Pulled it off. He was one half a shoe size away from sending the Nets to the Eastern Conference Finals. If you can believe that, we'll just tell you, for the Milwaukee Bucks, winning championships also comes with a little luck. But my pick here would be Miles McBride. I think he's a guy at 6'2", 200 pounds, West Virginia. I feel like he's a guy that can come in, can contribute right away for a win-now team, but also don't have the pressure of being one of those franchise foundation players that we're seeing with some of the guys earlier in the draft. He could come in. He's going to be a guy come off the bench. He helped Team Canada win silver at the 2018 Under-18 FIBA American Championship. We mentioned Jalen Green leading United States to the gold in that particular tournament also. But the guy's strengths, athletic wing, versatile skill set. Obviously, the Nets needed depth at the 1 and the 2 position. You got a guy who can play both. Solid ball handler, create separation. Will push to make plays in transition. I know Kevin Durant would love to actually play without the basketball, like he did in Golden State, being able to move and come off those screens off the ball. Shows great anticipation skills on defense. We know Kyrie Irving is not the greatest defensive player in the world.
Yeah. What? No.
That's good, Molly. He improved, but a good team defensively, just a little bit. I mean, a little bit, but not by much. But I feel like, but look at his numbers as a junior. SEC is scoring ranked 5th, 16.6 per game. 9th in steals at close to 2 a game. Led the SEC at 3 points per game. And when you think about the disappearance at the Joe Harris pulled in that second round, they're going to need more scoring. But especially when you got 3 guys who are ISO heavy and can actually spread the ball. It was a revelation to see James Harden actually take the role of facilitator to allow Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant to play more off the ball and to be more the finishers in that net offense. But also, you think about this, Steve Nash being a point guard himself, he like those gritty guys, those gritty point guards who can come in and contribute, but give you some tough minutes on defense. I think of Jason Terry. That's a guy that comes to mind. That comes to mind who can play point, who can spread the court, but can also play tough minutes. And you ask any LeBron James hater of the 2011 finals, they'll remind you the defensive job that Jason Terry was able to do on King James in that series. But I look at it like this, great guard, doesn't have to come in with the pressure of having to be a immediate contributor, can learn from a point guard who's coaching, can learn from not 1, not 2, but 3 superstars and how to play the game on a professional level. And also, you had a guy, if he's brought back, and Jeff Green, who's a savvy veteran who's been around the league, who's been through some tough battles, obviously, finals, playoffs, was a great contributor to the Nets last season. Depending if they bring back Blake Griffin also, there's a locker room that he can come in, he can grow and be a guy who can chip in. I think that would be a great fit for the Brooklyn Nets.
2 things. Number 1, they have 5 picks of this draft. So I think if they even keep 2 or 3 of them, I think they can end up as good people who can learn under a lot of veterans. And number 2, when you leave West Virginia, do you go to like some mental facility to get that slow offense out of your head and realize that you can't even come close to playing that offense in the NBA? I feel like you do. And so hopefully he survives that and has a very good
I think he will welcome the idea of playing a fast-paced offense. I mean, West Virginia, wow, offensively, they set basketball back about 20 years to the Hoosier days. But
20 is
okay.
Nice. He sets it back to at least 40 or 50 years. Anyway, speaking of people who loves offense that have been set back 40 to 50 years, let's talk about Jay.
Our audience have not been around 40 to 50 years. I'm just trying to be polite.
I'm sure some of them does it.
Anthony, let it go.
Our core demographic here.
Let it go.
Jay, 29.
You know what? I'm one of the biggest needs the Nets have is perimeter defenders because look, they've got the strongest nucleus of offensive players in the NBA with Durant, Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Joe Harris. So what do they need? Someone who can actually play defense at the point of attack out on the perimeter. So with that in mind, I'm going with Herb Jones out of Alabama. He's a second round. He's listed as an early second round pick on most mock drafts. But in my mind, the difference between late 20s and early 30s is negligible, especially with a player like Jones, who clearly and neatly fills a need for the Nets. Guy had a breakout senior season under Nate Oates, led Alabama to an SEC title, won SEC Player of the Year and Defensive Player of the Year, 3rd-team All-American, finalist for National Defensive Player of the Year. Very much a stat sheet stuff for 11 points per game, 6.6 boards, 3.3 assists, a little over a block, almost 2 steals. Shot a little under 45% from the floor, 35% from 3, 71% from the stripe. Guy has elite measurements for the wing position in the NBA, 6'7", with a 7-foot wingspan. Good pop, allows him to be a threat in transition and is a cutter. Alabama ran a lot of backdoor lob plays, knowing that Jones would be available. He's got great timing on lobs, finishes at the rim, off the catch quite easily. He's got great lateral quickness on the defensive end. He may not be an elite athlete by NBA standards, but he's good enough. He's also a really high-level field player, processes the game at a high speed. Defensive end, obviously, is where Jones shines in terms of that athleticism and the way he sees the game. On the ball, he's got quickness and agility to cut off drivers with his speed. He's balanced, uses his length to disrupt players. Extremely switchable because of that balance and length and quickness. He's a little skinny to guard fives, but teams can easily toss him on anyone 1 through 4 and allow him to use his length to contest and stay in front of him. Aggressively, he plays aggressive. Movements are smooth and swift as opposed to being in your face. He's disruptive, and he was the stopper for Alabama this season. Excels off the ball just as well. Terrific in transition as a guy who blocks shots and contests them. Never quits, makes every read with ease. Very much the captain of a very strong Alabama defense. He communicates out there on calling out switches, rotation, especially when he's on the back line. He's great at rotating from the weak side to contest. He's great at digging down into the paint to cut off a driver. He closes out well on shooters with his balance and high hands, covers ground quickly. He's very disruptive. He gets into passing lanes. Another guy who can be a one-man fast break, grabbing the rebound or coming off a steal. This is a guy who is an actual defensive playmaker. Generally one of the 5 best defenders in college basketball last season, and his style will very much translate to the NBA. Offensively, yeah, he's a bit of a mixed bag. There are some positives. Terrific passer. As I said, he can grab and go on the break. He makes really good decisions in the passing game at high speed, operates well out of ball screens to make reads, passes well on the move, averaged more than 3 assists this game. This past season, as a secondary ball handler, and he often had the ball in his hands in critical moments because that's how much Oates and the coaching staff trusted him. His vision is pretty strong regarding how he sees angles for bounce passes, for cutters, always finds the open man at the rim, able to do so off a live dribble, comfortable handling the ball in the way you need to in the NBA, attacking, running occasional secondary ball screens, driving in a straight line. Look, bottom line, guys, he's a genuine plus defender, a high-level passer, and smart in the way he thinks the game. Now, obviously, what it comes down to for this guy is his jump shot. Without it, he's more of a lower end of the bench player if he sticks it off. But given everything we know about this guy in terms of his character and his work ethic, I'm in the school of guys who are willing to bet on him to get his jump shot to a workable place where it can keep him in the NBA. If it does, he's legitimately a high rotation guy or possible starter because and here's the thing, guys, his positives and his skill set fit a glaring need for the Nets. A Swiss Army knife player who can be a solid secondary playmaker on offense and a switchable, aggressive point of attack defender who can disrupt what opposing teams are doing on offense. If he's there, I don't think you wait till the second round. I think he's a guy they need to take at 29 because he very neatly and perfectly fits a need.
A few things. Number one, I think anybody from 20 to 40 is interchangeable, considering those are teams that are either looking for good talent at the top of the second round or looking for players that fit the system. And when you have teams who are consistent playoff teams, they need players to fit their system. They don't care about stars because they have stars. That's why they're where they are right now. I love Jones. I would say this, as I said before, he is the Alabama guy who I would take because I like what his upside is. Mm-hmm. And I think he represents, like I said, the 4-year player that I love to see get in the NBA and have experience. Like I said, Herb Jones, yes. Joshua Primo, who has way too much raw side, no. So I made a pick here. I'll share a little bit of it since we have a little bit of time to kill before we actually talk about who the Knicks actually picked at number 19. But Jared Butler is not off the board yet, and I love this guy from Baylor. He is played 3 years at Baylor. He is so many offensive weapons. He has a tight handle, and his time at Baylor, I know Anthony picked McBride before, but I think you could just put McBride in like a little bit of a container, put him in and rebuild him, and you're going to get Jared Butler because he does things much better than McBride does. His crossovers are very good. He can make a shot out of a variety of different situations. If you need a guy who can really run the point for you in situations where you're in the second quarter and somebody has 4 fouls, or if Kyrie Irving has decided to go to an enlightenment session in some way, shape, or form. I love the stuff Kyrie does sometimes, but sometimes he does it at the wrong possible times for his team.
You think?
He could do that. His primary strength here, like I said, he is dynamic in isolations. He's dynamic in ball screens. He can hunt for a 3 better than a lot of other people can. He's not a great 3-and-D guy. He's only solid defensively. He can stay in front, and he has average length. That's a problem. He's 6'3" and only has a 6'5" wingspan.
Yeah.
This is a league, almost any pro league. You need size. He doesn't have it. He probably won't do good at the rim. He only really does mediocre when he's in the half court. You need to get him in transition. He's not going to be a guy who's going to play 25 or 30 minutes for you. He's going to play 15 to 20. A lot of people in this position are going to play 15 to 20, but I can see the way the Nets really put in a lot of rotation guys last year, talking about a Bruce Brown, talking about a Jeff Green, talking even about a Nick Claxton. They find a way to get minutes for you on this team, especially in the early going. Will it translate to the playoffs? Who knows? And I know that's really what the main goal is for the Nets. But when it comes to getting yourself to a 1 or a 2 seed, the Nets really were Yankees 2017 like last year, and did a lot of work. I know Jay has always said Steve Nash was a coach of the year candidate, and I didn't poo-poo him, but I was kind of like, not that high. But you know what? When you really think about it, he did so much last year with the injuries, because sometimes it was just Kevin Durant and 4 guys. Harden and 4 guys. Irving and 4 guys. And he won in almost every one of those situations. And there's nothing to take away from that. And I think that's why the Nets might use all 5 of their draft picks, and they might actually have scoring time for all 5 of their draft picks. Steve Nash knows how to get the most out of little, even though right now he has a lot.
Here's the other thing with that, Rabbi. When you know what the contract situation is for this team in terms of this, how close they are up to the salary cap and how much money they have in the big 3, and how much they don't have a lot of leeway salary cap wise. So they may need to use all 5 guys because you're bringing guys in on rookie contracts because you don't have the money to go out and play big in the free agent pool this year, or, unless you try and swing trades later on down the line. But I'll tell you, here's the thing. I mean, you talked about Nash and what he had to do juggling in terms of the 50 million different starting lineup combinations he had. Think about how much of a challenge that would be for a veteran head coach, let alone a guy who's in first year. No head coaching experience, no assistant coaching really experience. So the fact that he was able to make that work is a testament to his own basketball IQ, having good guys around him. And guys, I don't think we can understate how much the loss of Mike D'Antoni is going to impact the Nets next year, because D'Antoni was very much Nash's consigliere. He's he's the guy he goes to. We talked about it during our March Madness show about how Michigan having a guy like Phil Martelli on the sidelines as a sounding board for Juwan Howard. The same situation was there for the Nets with Nash and D'Antoni. So it'll be interesting to see how the Nets handle that loss. That's a huge vacuum that would need to get filled. So it'll be interesting to see how they fill that, especially because D'Antoni was also Nash's offensive coordinator. So who steps into that role? So the Nets have a very interesting offseason ahead of them. I'll tell you this, though. To me, people can talk about, if Kevin Durant's shoe size was a little smaller, things would not be the way they are in Milwaukee. But I'll tell you this. If this team has the big 3 healthy for at least 50% of the season,
they win. They win the title. They win the title. I think it's pretty simple. By the way, Jay, you mentioned they lost their offensive coordinator. Meanwhile, their defensive coordinator, Ime Udoka, is also now in Boston. So Nash has a lot of work to do.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he and Marks fill those empty coaching slots.
They have an experienced assistant going in this spot for Udoka. I don't know exactly what they're going to do with the D'Antoni spot. I know D'Antoni left the team because even at 71, he still thinks he can easily get a head coaching job and was in the race for the Portland head coaching job. But I do think that Nash has learned a lot under those two assistants in year one. I believe he still has Jacques Vaughn on that team to kind of lead him in terms of how to manage the team, but there is still a lot of work to be done with this team. And again, everybody just gets a year older next year in terms of their stars. Anthony, you want to weigh in?
And
I feel like you want to jump in.
Yeah, on top of that, you got to think about the Brooklyn Nets. They only have one year window left, and that's next season. Because you think about it, if they don't. Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant don't sign extensions, they all opt out the next season. So it's pretty much like the Nets are in a position where they have to go all in, where they have the guys available, where they have the guys still here, but also at the same time kind of plan for what if. Like, what if they don't bring one or two or even all three guys back after next season? They have to have some pieces to still move forward. So Sean Marks in a tough spot right now because you got three all-stars, but you also have three very mercurial is a good word to say it. Guys who are a little temperamental to say the least. You're not exactly sure when you think they're happy, they may not be. I mean, we've seen it with Kevin Durant, we've seen it with Kyrie Irving, we saw it with James Harden last season. So, I mean, the Nets front office, look, they're close for me for being in the conference finals. But they have a lot of work to cut out. I mean, look, they have three all-stars. They can easily win a championship at the same time. It could all go south. We saw how the injuries kicked in. We saw you have three guys with egos. You see how that can kick in a little bit. So next season, the Nets are going to be one of again interesting team to watch, but may not always be for the basketball reasons.
Let's talk about while we wait for the Knicks pick at 19, which will be coming in the next few minutes. Let's talk about some lottery guys who we did hit on really quick. Again, Toronto Raptors. I really don't like the Scotty Barnes pick at number 4. He played high school basketball with Cade Cunningham, Moses Moody, and Day'Ron Sharpe. But I do think then we talked about this before. You have a plan. If you have a plan to win now, Scotty Barnes fits well because he is a clear defensive genius who still needs to work on his shot a ton. But in the position that you are with the Raptors team, Jay, I don't know if they're rebuilding or not, but I don't know if Scotty Barnes is the right fit, especially because you need someone for Kyle Lowry's position because I don't think Lowry's staying.
Well, here's the thing, though. I don't think they're rebuilding either, but here's the thing. The thought here would be, and I think that Barnes gives them a Swiss Army knife type of player. If Lowry's gone and your 3-guard rotation, where you've got a newbie starting at the 2 and Van Vliet starts at the 1, and Barnes is the guy who comes off the bench for either one of those. Yeah, I mean, obviously, he can't replace Lowry. I mean, Lowry's an all-star. Lowry's a veteran. Lowry is Mr. Raptor. So if he's gone, what would, if he is gone, would Suggs have been a better fit there? Yes. But we don't know that he's gone or not. I mean, we've got all offseason to see how that plays out. And you got to wonder if the reason, and Rabbi, I said this to you before we came on the air, you got to wonder if the pick was made for Barnes because maybe there are the talks going on between the Raptors and Lowry where they're thinking they may have him on the way back. And if that is the case where Lowry does come back, then this pick absolutely is a great pick for them.
And it makes sense.
It makes a little less sense if he's not there, but I still think it's a decent pick. The key for it going from being a decent pick to being a great pick, yes, is dependent on whether Lowry returns. And Rabbi, I know I think we're a little behind on the television because based on what I'm reading in The Athletic and their live draft update, Trey Murphy is already off the board, even though they're still talking about Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
Trey Murphy went. By the way, Trey Murphy went number 17 to the Grizzlies, and as we mentioned before, Chris Duarte went number 13 to the Indiana Pacers.
Here's some interesting stuff, Rob. I just want to catch everybody up if you didn't already know, because I don't think these have been announced yet. But as of right now, it looks like Alperen Sengun, the big man out of Turkey,
he's going to the Rockets, from the Thunder's pick at 16.
And Murphy is actually headed to New Orleans in a trade. So
that is the trade that actually where they gave up Adams and Bledsoe. They're sending them to Memphis, and Jonas Valanciunas, who is a stud in my mind, who was growing in that Memphis scheme, goes to New Orleans, where I don't know where he's going to fit now that I think about it, with Brandon Ingram and Zion Williamson, because you can't really run three bigs in an NBA scheme, but I do think that he can make a huge contribution. I don't think the Pelicans are done. I think the Pelicans have some work to do, because they need to give Zion Williamson at the least. The NBA is calling for them to get a play-in spot. They're practically begging for the New Orleans Pelicans to just be a little bit good to be in the playoffs, Anthony. But unfortunately, this team is continuously...
The league have pretty much done everything they could to try to get the Pelicans at least to a play-in scenario. We saw it in the bubble. We saw it this season. We're going to see it next season. And it's just like the NBA is doing its part. The Pelicans are the ones who are not holding up their end of the bargain. I feel like Stan Van Gundy was not a good pick for this hire.
No, absolutely not.
I didn't think Alvin Gentry got a fair chance with a healthy Zion Williamson to see what he can do with this team. It's going to be interesting to see what the Pelicans do, because because obviously they've been chirpers, they've been little chirps. So Zion's can't want him out of New Orleans to go play anywhere but New Orleans. We think about the Benson family owning the Pelicans, but seem to be more fixated on the primary breadwinners, the New Orleans Saints, and that being a bit of an issue. So, hey, look, it's not the first time we've seen ownership of dual organizations in sports paying more attention to one than the other. It's kind of like you love one sibling, but you kind of ignore the other one. It's like Marshall Brady gets all the love, and what about Jam Brady being stuck in the middle and getting overlooked? And we all do a little Signe. So that's pretty much what it's like with the Bensons and their ownership right now. Rabbi is kind of smiling because he's a Brady Bunch reference. But
I feel like we're going to have a kitty cat.
I feel
like we're going to have a Kitty Carryall reference after this, which means we've officially jumped the shark if we haven't already. By the way, Adams is going to stay in Memphis. Bledsoe is not expected to stay, and I don't know who would want Eric Bledsoe, because he seemed like the problem in Milwaukee. He could get you points for you, but his defense is awful, and I think that's one of the reasons, as we see now, by the way, the Knicks are going to send the pick that they're about to have to the Hornets. So we'll take a look on that, as it just says proposed trade on my little board right now. So that kind of throws a wrench into everything that we're talking about. I'll look that up real quick. But also, Anthony, I want to talk real quick. You were talking about Davion Mitchell, who went to the Kings at number 9. You were saying this is a weird fit, just considering who's on this team right now.
Yes. I mean, you think about this. Buddy, obviously we're going to talk about the Lakers shenanigans later on in the show, but they drafted Davion Mitchell. Look, I think he's going to be a great player and a great fit. But the Sacramento Kings they're trying to move here, but you already have Tyrese Halliburton already on the team who was a tremendous rookie player for the Kings last season. A great player, showed tremendous strides. And you have De'Aaron Fox, who is still on the team. So I'm trying to figure out exactly what the Sacramento Kings are trying to do. I mean, when you have young players already on the team, probably the worst thing you do to kill their confidence is draft their possible replacement. That's kind of like when you're the supervisor and you're basically training your pseudo replacement, and you don't realize it just yet.
Right.
But this is kind of what we're seeing.
Anthony, are you invoking the Green Bay Packers quarterback drafting strategy over the last few years? Drafting drafting Love while Rodgers is still there. Is that the angle you're going with here?
I was trying to stay away from Aaron Rodgers in this show. We had too much of him.
Football into this show.
Yeah, but
we can never stay away from Aaron Rodgers. Hopefully, this week makes sure that we do stay away at least from Aaron Rodgers for a long, long time to come. By the way, to let you know, before we continue, the Knicks will not be getting any draft capital in this draft for the trade that they're going to send to Charlotte. And the pick, by the way, and I will spoil it for you guys, looks to be Kai Jones out of Texas. But
which is ironic, Rabbi, because there are a couple of mock drafts that had Kai going at 19 to the Knicks. So the fact that he's going 19 but not to the Knicks is just kind of wild to me.
It's kind of interesting when you say this, because they're going to give it away for a future first rounder. We don't know too much about that yet, but it is a future first rounder that the Knicks will get. I guess they didn't want to make this pick. I don't know why they didn't want to make this pick. They didn't find anybody really significant in that spot. But it's a fine idea to kind of get more draft capital in the future. That's what we call the Belichick rule. Even though we don't actually use that pick for anybody good in the future, we still have it. But Anthony, it's an interesting way to go, especially again for a team that I think needs pieces.
Well, they need depth pretty much all up and down the roster. If you look at if you want to think about it, but we seen last year with the Knicks when they basically from a pick that they got in a trade, they got Emmanuel quickly. So it did turn out. So we've seen at least in recent memory that a draft night trade actually works in the Knicks' favor. But I'm looking at the TV screen now. I mean, obviously 3 picks, top 22. They're trading this one to Charlotte. But it'd be interesting to see what comes of it, because I think maybe, like I said, I think the Knicks are in a position where they do need some depth. They do need to address their backcourt situation as far as point guard without question, but also a playmaker who can create his own shots. But also because you're going to lose guys to free agency, you don't know you're going to have Alex Burks back. You might lose Reggie Bullock to free agency. You're definitely going to lose Nolan Well to free agency. He pretty much outplayed his contract last season. He's definitely prime for a free agent deal. The Knicks are going to have to add some depth, and good Lord, what the hell is Spike Lee wearing? But Spike Lee's a distraction. I'm sorry, whatever he's wearing. But
Spike Lee is a distraction. But if you see your TV right now, Kai Jones's little pink blazer is also a distraction. So everything just kind of evens out in the end as a distraction. But
hey, look,
for a
guy who can make pink look good, I like his suit. All right.
He does make it look good. That's absolutely correct. All right, before we get off track.
Okay. Yeah,
before we get off track over here.
Spike Lee
continue.
Dressed like the. Okay, I was just gonna say Spike Lee is just like the old lady that's like waiting for the crossing guard to cross across the street. I don't know what he's wearing right now.
All right, it's not actually. You know what? Spike Lee's attire is the least of my concerns. I have to say, Rabbi, I hope that the Knicks know what they're doing here. I find it hard to believe that they did not feel that there is anybody left on their draft board at this point that they felt would be a good pick. I'm a little surprised by this. I mean, I figured there was talk coming into, days leading up to it, and today, earlier today, about the Knicks looking to package 19 and 21 to
That's what I'm surprised about. That I think if you're going to do that, you're going to move up.
Surprised that if you're making this trade, that you're trading this pick, that it's not for another player. For a team that needs depth pretty much everywhere, to give up this pick to me is a little surprising. So, I mean, does that mean like they looked at who's left on the board and said, okay, there's only one guy left on our board, and we think he's still going to be there at 21, so we might as well send this pick somewhere else for future considerations? I mean, look, Is it possible here's the thing though, if the Knicks are as competitive next year as they were this year, chances are that pick, is it going to be in the same place?
Well, you're taking the Hornets pick.
You're
taking the Hornets pick.
Yeah, let me rewind that. You're figuring Charlotte is going to potentially end up in the lottery next year. So what you're hoping is that, if you're as competitive, your first round pick next year is going to be somewhere where it is now. And you're hoping that you can get a lottery level pick from Charlotte. What'll be interesting to see, guys, is if that pick is protected or not.
It will probably be protected. If you're going to make it a 19, then it has to be. At
some point.
It has to be. It's just a question of at what level it's going to be.
Right. And that's the thing is that if the Knicks only get it if it falls outside the top 10, then I got to ask myself, why are you making this deal? There's plenty of guys in my mind left on the board as you watch, the best player available stuff roll by. There's plenty of guys who are still out there who would have been good fits for the Knicks to fill out depth at any one of their positional needs. Point guard, wing players, bigs of some kind. I'll be interested to see the justification for giving up this pick and not getting something back this year. It'll be interesting to see what their rationale was behind that, because that the New York media is going to go after them, is going to hound them to get an answer for that. And I will wager this, the New York media and definitely the New York fan base is probably not going to be happy with whatever their rationale was for doing this.
They won't care. Anthony Rizzo is over here. Before we move on, I want to talk a little bit about James Bouknight, because that actually was a very good transition into what the Charlotte Hornets did at number 11. He is somebody who a lot of people had going as high as 6. And if the Thunder had, a little bit of sense and didn't think about getting draft picks in 2026, they would easily have picked him. He is a New York guy. You have people who, he went to LaSalle Academy in Manhattan. Meta World Peace is very formally known there, now known as Meta Fort Artest. And God Shamgod / Wells also went over there, to people who had decent college, and in the case of Artest, NBA championship careers. He only did 1 year in Connecticut, he did 2 years in Connecticut, forgoed his final 3 years of eligibility. He has terrific size, 6'8" wingspan. His sophomore year was so much better than his freshman year, and he actually improved competition going into the Big East from where it was the AAC. If he has a clear runaway, he is going to give you a highlight. He can shoot. He is a terrific scoring threat off the bounce. He can score at all 3 levels in the NBA. And he's one of the only people in this. He can. I didn't say he will.
You guys both know the biggest knock on him by NBA personnel people is that he didn't shoot it well from 3 in college. And the other concern here is, if you're going to put the ball in his hands a lot, especially as your guy on bench units, he's a little turnover prone. So it'll be interesting.
He's a little turnover prone, but the shooting actually improved through combines, through a lot of shots. Obviously, it's not game, but we'll see. But he has the potential to do that, and you can't say that about a lot of people in this draft.
No, and as you put it,
all angles.
Yeah, the ability to create your own shot is a skill that translates to the NBA level. And even if there is some concern about the consistency of Bouknight as a shooter, there is none of that about his ability as a scorer. And as you guys know, those are 2 different skill sets.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
the scoring thing and his ability, as you said, to create his own shot, especially off the bounce, will serve him well as he looks to improve his shooting at the NBA level.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. You give LaMelo Ball another toy to play with. I mean, you got the playmaker, and you got Bouknight who can create his own shots, can probably spell Ball some minutes at the point guard position. You're going to get a healthy Gordon Hayward back too. So the Hornets have some.
Gordon Hayward ever going to be in the same sentence again, Anthony?
Okay, in theory, healthy Gordon Hayward in theory. But that backcourt, I think the Hornets have a good young backcourt that can grow and gel and play off of one another. Because you see LaMelo Ball, he can score on his own, but he is probably at this age, at this point in his career, is arguably one of the best playmaking point guards in the league right now. He should be playing, and I feel like he should have been playing in Japan right now for Team USA. Because I feel like that was a need on that roster. But you add Bo Knight, you give him somebody who can stretch the basket, who can stretch the court, who can stretch the offense, and can play and another wing player, who can knock down shots. So I think the Hornets really made a good pick. They gave they had a good 1-2 combination in the backcourt that should be fun to watch.
Well, I do like people who have like a New York mentality, who feels like they can play on the playground. And that's something that I want to see out of Book Knight, especially, like I said, he's playing in a damn good system. I think this is somebody who fell to the right spot. There are so many athletes on this team. Bridges is an athlete. In the 5 games, he'll play healthy next year. Hayward is an athlete. Ball is an athlete. This team will be fun to watch. And even last year, this team was fun to watch. I love watching the Hornets play. They're horrible in clutch situations. And in the end of the year, they almost faltered like crazy. But when this team has no pressure on them, they're really good.
When the playing game against Indiana, they were as bad as it can get. I mean, I know that's growing pains, but that was pretty embarrassing.
To go into a game, especially with a lot of high hopes. I think in the middle of the season, before LaMelo Ball's injury, they were a top 4 or 5 seed. They were thinking they were going to be playing the Knicks in the first round for a lot of the year. They just have so much talent. They've been gathering it for the last couple of years, guys. And I expect LaMelo Ball to even take another step forward last year. I was so impressed with the skill set he showed. He had as much of a skill set as I've seen any NBA player have, especially in the Ball family, where we were joking about all of these players, all of these Ball brothers are failures. He had so much pressure going into him. He rose over all expectations, guys.
Yeah, you know what? Well, I guess, does this mean I have to give Michael Jordan credit for being a good owner for a change?
No, you don't. They still only made the 10th seed, and they still got killed in the play-in game. No, yeah. I know you will find a way to bash Michael Jordan at least once an episode just to piss off Jordan stans. But you also come to the point where you actually think Space Jam is the best movie of all time, just to pick off Michael Jordan stans. Okay, but not the best movie of all time, but to say, oh, it got really good reviews, and then you're like, did it really?
But none of the Space Jam movie got great reviews, but they didn't make the movie for us, okay? They made it for my 6-year-old nephew who gets to stay quiet for 2 hours. I mean, look, I enjoy both Space Jam movies. I don't go in with expectation when it comes to family movies. Like, I sat through both Frozen 1 and 2, okay? They didn't make it for me. They made it for the 5,000
that they definitely made for kids,
to let it go at Disney on Ice, okay? They didn't make it for me, but they're very enjoyable to watch.
They didn't make it for you, but there's still a lot of uncertainty with that movie. But honestly, I do think there's just a lot of good things going on as we get really off of the topic. There's a lot of good things going on with this Kings team. I mean, with this Hornets team, I really like them for the future. I think their roster makeup is sensational. And I do think they have a lot of good things going forward. They just need to execute a little bit better. So we'll see that. Now, guys, do you think the Knicks will actually keep this pick at 21, most importantly?
You know what? I'll tell you this. They should. It's a question of whether or not they do. But I got to tell you, you talk about a team that, needs an long-term answer at point guard, needs shooters, needs, more floor spacers, needs potentially another big, in case they lose. They're going to probably lose Nerlens Noel in free agency. And Mitchell Robinson seems to be injury prone. So they've got depth. They need guys to slot in behind Robinson, behind Reggie Bullock, or Alec Burke. You don't know if they're going to be able to keep both of those guys. I got to tell you, if they get rid of this pick, I'm just going to throw up my hands and I'm done with them.
Well, as it was just shown, they need depth at every position on the court.
Everywhere.
Tom Thibodeau is going to run this team out of town because they had so many players that played 42 minutes, 44 minutes, 46 minutes. And I think they had maybe 3 out of the top 10 guys this year in minutes on this team. And again, Derrick Rose is not going to be if he comes back, which I think he will, is not going to be a 32 to 33 minute guy consistently. You can expect him to be maybe like 25 to 30 minutes.
Here we go.
It'll be very interesting to see. The pick is in. Finally, thank God. And the Knicks pick. I have this on silence. So they pick Keon Johnson from Tennessee, the guy who I was actually having, I believe, for the other team in New York. So, guys, any thoughts on Keon Johnson?
Anthony, go ahead. Lead us off, man.
Let's see. I'm watching on delay, so it's kind of like
it's Keon Johnson of Tennessee. So,
well, I mean, you said that the Knicks needed depth at every position, so I guess this is kind of a start. Where he fits in the rotation, you know what? That's a good question because I'm watching now. Right now, let me see. Hold
on. Okay. So while he talks, even though we've said what the pick is, Keon Johnson is a very good guard wing, guys. And I think he's got a good wingspan. He's got good measurements for an off guard. He's very explosive. He's an elite athlete, and I think that'll help him in a Thibodeau style system. But it's all on the offensive end. His defense is kind of weak. It's a little bit of a surprise. I think they thought they could get him here because I don't think they thought anybody was willing to be there on the board at 21. Again, I actually had him going to the Nets at 27 and kind of scratched that in hopes of Jared Butler for them initially. He is going to be a good team player. He rarely missed a switch at Tennessee. He rotates well in scrambles. He plays his position well. I just don't know if he has enough offensive ability to get enough shots on this team, and if he has enough defensive ability to have confidence for Tom Thibodeau to play him 20 minutes a night.
Yeah, I mean, Rabbi, here's the thing. I mean, I always like to look at, what the NBA player personnel guys and scouts are citing as negatives on a guy because every talking head in the media and on television obviously always plays up the positives. Guys, 6'5" freshman coming out of Tennessee. Everybody likes his athleticism. They look, the word associated with his athleticism is freak, but here's the thing. He's not real polished offensively. Doesn't
not at all
great. You wonder about his decision making. If all that clicks with his size and athleticism, you're going to get a really good player. And in today's world, in a positionless NBA, he can play and defend 3 positions. Needs to establish a little more variety to get his shots. If he learns to make better plays for others, he's going to really, get himself a good slot in the league. Got exposed at Tennessee because he couldn't make a shot. It's not that his shot is broken. He just needs reps. However, they like this kid, his character, his work ethic. That's the thing that, a lot of people are high on. That's the thing. The athletic ability is there. The skill level is what needs to be improved upon. So to me, this guy is so much more of a developmental guy than I saw the Knicks taking for a Tom Thibodeau team. So I'm not sure because, Rabbi, a guy whose name you threw around in our production meeting is still on the board, I believe, and that's Jaden Springer.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
also thought this thing too that he's a cutter and a slasher on a team where you probably have 3 or 4 of those already. So that's kind of be interesting because you already have a guy who can finish that you drafted last year, Obi Toppin. You already have a slasher in RJ Barrett, and you have a finisher already in Julius Randle, you're kind of looking for somebody who can kind of take the pressure or take some of that away from those guys and make life a little easier on the offensive end. I mean, his athleticism is there, but a team where outside shooting was so lacking.
Yeah.
And really, they desperately needed to do that. I don't see where that's going to come along. And maybe, like I said, maybe that develops along the way over time. But right now, I mean, Jay Billis is calling him a steal of the draft. I'm not so sure.
You know what?
I don't know.
Y'all know I got mad respect for Jay Billis, but I don't know how you call this kid, a steal of the draft, because he doesn't. I don't even. To me, look, you guys both know you do two things in the draft. You draft for need or you draft best available player. I don't see, with everybody still left on the board, how the Knicks looked at Keon Johnson and said, this is the best available player. There's so many other guys that are still on the board that I can't understand the thought here.
Yeah.
Well,
I also think about this, the Knicks in the point guard, Sharif Cooper is still on the board too. Like you got guys that addresses a need that you probably could have went with this direction, or maybe kept the 19th pick and been able to pick to address a need, and maybe this wouldn't have been looked at so much as a stretch pick.
Yeah,
well, for you guys, it's a stretch pick. I do think it's a good pick at where it is, but also if you're thinking of a name out there, how about Usman Garuba, who was still on the board?
Another guy who had been to the Knicks at 19 on a lot of mock drafts. Big guy out of a European guy. I'm like, you got to wonder what the thought process here. I mean, unless, because here's the thing, guys. I look at this pick, and this strikes me as the type of pick that we saw during the previous coaching era, where they're like, oh yeah, we're going to develop all of these guys, and I'm like, really? And that just never happened.
Yeah, and then with Usman Garuba, I'm still surprised he is still on the board right now.
A lot of people
it's the fact that he can defend the pick and roll on defense. That is like as essential for a big in today's NBA, for you to stay on the court on defense, particularly late in games. You have to defend the switch on a pick and roll. You have to defend smaller guys, and that's what he does probably better than any of the bigs that that's in this draft, which is why he was in so many mock drafts ranked so high in the top 20 even. So I'm surprised that the Knicks didn't go that direction. I thought that was the way they would go at number 19, probably go with a big and maybe address the playmaking point guard scenario with the 21 pick, because they didn't have to wait long. They probably would have had guys that they were probably looking at still available, particularly at the two picks that they were drafted. So I'm very interested now to see what comes out of that pick for that trade with Charlotte.
Yeah, I mean, and Rabbi, the other thing, I mean, you think about another guy who was mocked to the Knicks on a couple of mock drafts, and that's Isaiah Jackson, the 6'10" center freshman out of Kentucky. And the kind of the wink nudge nudge there was, he's a CAA client who went to Kentucky, which is something, you would think the Knicks would be high on, considering, the CAA connection that, that Rose has, Leon, with that, that would have been an interesting pick, to give the Knicks some insurance. Because like I said, you may lose Nerlens Noel. So, you wonder, like, why there's, like I said, there's so many other guys still on the board that make more sense. I mean, you talk about Jackson, long, lean, elite defensive potential, is a really big shot blocker. The guy would start out as a rim runner, catch and finish guy. But you know what? There's a lot. The comp is Daniel Gafford. And if the Knicks drafted a guy who's a freshman and a little raw, and he turns into Daniel Gafford, my God, you take that with the 21st pick.
Yeah, but let's wrap this up really quick now, because I want to get into especially our final segment. I by the way, Jackson went one spot after to LA, which will be Washington at number 22. And speaking of that, free agency begins next week, guys. There are some interesting storylines in the offseason. No big prize in the free agent class for the first time in a long time.
Correct.
But you know the NBA loves the hot stove. And Anthony, you were going to talk about tonight on how the Lakers need a third of their big three, but they already got it tonight.
Yeah, we were talking about the hot stove, but the Lakers just set a 5-alarm fire tonight before the draft. Kind of stole all the thunder pretty much.
Literally, they stole a Thunder player and put him on their team.
Yeah, right. No pun intended. But Russell Westbrook is going to Los Angeles. He's going home, basically, since he is a California native. He is going to be now part of the Lakers' big three to go with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. Now, quick mention, I like this trade for the Wizards. I don't know how this fits for the Lakers in particular, because look, we knew they were looking for a third star, a third guy to kind of go alongside LeBron and Anthony Davis. I don't know if Russell Westbrook was the guy. There was talks about Buddy Hield being kind of a part of a trade. I think that trade would have benefited the Lakers a little more, whereas it would have kept KCP, who's been a pretty good solid player for the team the last couple of years. Played big in the finals in the bubble against Miami, knocked down a lot of big shots. And in the trade, you give up Kyle Kuzma, who I thought really did need a change of scenery in Los Angeles. I felt like he fell in love with the celebrity of being a Laker rather than the hard work and grit and play that comes with the Laker uniform, that you have to live up to those standards. So that's one thing. Montrezl Harrell just fell out of the rotation for whatever reason. Opted into his contract, which was player option, which allowed that trade for him to be moved. But you look at the Lakers makeup right now. Okay, you have the three big stars, but now you're still capped out right now. You still only really have the mid-level exception to work with as far as adding guys. And the team needs outside shooting. Like Russell Westbrook, for what it's worth, you know what you want to get with him. He's going to play. He doesn't take plays off at all. High motor, very emotional, very he doesn't know the world. He only plays at one skill level, and that's Mach 5 speeds. All right, you know what you're giving Russell Westbrook, and it's going to be interesting to see if the Lakers do convince Anthony Davis to play a little more at the 5, because Russell Westbrook is at his best when there's space on the floor and there's no big clogging up the middle of the paint. So you clearly don't want to see Westbrook playing off of Marc Gasol next season. But what this does do for the Lakers is that this gives them another ball handler and another playmaker, because we saw with LeBron James when he was not on the court how the Lakers offense completely went south. It was even worse when he got hurt and missed several weeks with the ankle injury, and he wasn't 100% in the playoffs. They thought that was going to be it with Dennis Schroeder, but Schroeder has just been so up and down, inconsistent. Pretty much fell out of favor with the Lakers front offense, and one Magic Johnson in particular, who is not in the front office, but when Laker legend like Magic
stopped him from making comments like he still is.
Yeah, but Magic is still seen as a Laker all-time great. So when he speaks and he doesn't speak that highly of you, that can kind of echo as far as your reputation. But also you gotta think about this. Alex Caruso, Horton Tucker is restricted free agents. Those are guys that the Lakers do want to bring back. I don't know how they're going to be able to make these three work. It's going to be interesting to see what Frank Vogel does. By the way, key loss in their coaching staff is Jason Kidd, who is no longer with the team. And I felt like that was a big part of that coaching, especially when you consider Jason Kidd being a Hall of Fame point guard and being a floor general who can kind of who's good at bouncing ideas off of LeBron during those 2 years together. And also, you just gotta kind of see how this fits right now, because I look at it like the trade, like, okay, you got your third star, but how are you gonna make this work? And we see what Westbrook and we see what Westbrook, and this is becoming now. And I was reading ESPN, they're kind of making a joke about this, and this is becoming a yearly tradition of Westbrook being traded, because this is the
you could set your calendar on it whenever it happens.
This is technically the third off season now. Westbrook is being traded.
Yes,
It's being
so much
moved.
for Westbrook not having a tradable contract.
Yeah, so like I said, it's gonna be. I said the Lakers, they got their big star. It's gonna come down to two things how they make this work. A, what they do as far as creating shooters and how Frank Foker make the chemistry work, but it's also gonna be on Russell Westbrook. It's gonna get to a point where it's like, okay, now you're gonna have to play alongside not one star, but two, and how much of Westbrook's game is he willing to sacrifice for the other two?
Here's my take on this, guys. I got one take that to me is the big to me that to me is the headline reason why they made this trade, and one reason why this is not going to be as good as everybody thinks it is. Here's the thing, right? The problem the Lakers had last year is lack of offense with LeBron James off the floor. Okay. Looking at the last couple of years, in 2019-20, Lakers scored 112.1 points per 100 possessions with James on the floor. When he was off the floor, that number nosedived to 105.2. You put that in perspective with James on the floor, that's the seventh best offensive rating in the NBA. Without him on the floor, it dropped to 29th. Last year, you talked about Schrader, you talked about Harrell, two guys who were also bought into essentially allow the Lakers to not lose offense when LeBron sat. More of the same, though. 112.4 per 100 possessions with James on the floor, 105.8 per 100 when he's not on the floor. With him on the floor, 14th best rated offense in the NBA. Without him, 27th. The offensive drop-off when he sat, and especially once Davis was not available, egregious. So in theory, bringing in Westbrook fixes that, especially if he and Davis play their minutes together, right? Wizards had a massive offensive drop-off when Westbrook was on the floor without Bradley Beal. Ironically enough, it didn't happen when the reverse was the case. But the team scored really well, the two of them playing together. So the ability to mix and match those three guys should enable the Lakers to stay above water in terms of being able to generate offense when LeBron sits. When you add to that their defensive identity, though, you got to hope that Westbrook's inconsistent attention to defense doesn't wind up shooting them in the foot. The thing I think that could wind up shooting them in the foot with this deal, and Anthony kind of referenced it in terms of shooters, Westbrook's arguably one of the worst three-point shooters in NBA history when you talk about volume. For players who've taken, and I'm reading this straight off The Athletic, guys, who have taken at least 2,000 attempts in their career, only Charles Barkley at 26.6% is worse than Russ's 30.5%. And Westbrook has taken over 1,400 more attempts from deep, nearly doubling Barkley's career volume. LeBron is already teetering on the edge of league-wide average with his jump shot. Davis has never been a consistent threat from deep. So now, while you have three guys who are really good at going downhill and attacking at the rim, you got potentially three non-shooters from distance, and you just gave away in this deal your best shooter from distance in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. So it's going to be interesting to see how Vogel and Rob Pelinka, the GM, fit pieces around those three, because now it's even more important than ever that you got legitimate knockdown shooters filling the other two slots on the floor, or at least coming off the bench.
I don't like this deal for many reasons, and one thing I'm curious about is what is Westbrook going to do to LeBron's load when they're both on the floor? It's hard to tell Westbrook, hey, this is a shot that you take 97% of the time. Give it to LeBron. And I think that's one of the list. I understand what you're saying. LeBron gathers all this respect and stuff like that. But LeBron played with Durant.
Rabbi, I'm going to reference my previous point about everybody was concerned that when he joined the Wizards, he and Beal played very well together. So
they did, but he had something to prove. Usually people go back to the mean. And there were times last year when he went back to the mean.
Playing in his hometown. He's going to have something to prove because of that.
Well, we'll see what happens. It's going to be a very interesting situation. Westbrook, every time you think he's out, he gets back in a big situation. It's like clockwork. Jay, let's talk about Ben Simmons offseason.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, guys, for me, I ranted enough about, Simmons' epic fail going completely MIA at the end of the Sixers loss to the Hawks in the second round when the team really needed him to step up. So I'm not going to revisit that here. I just don't have the energy to do it again. So it can't be really a surprise to anybody that his future with the Sixers is in doubt. New head of basketball operations, Daryl Morey, has one mandate: put together the best team possible around perennial MVP candidate Joel Embiid to give the Sixers the best chance to get to the NBA Finals and get their center a ring. If that means Simmons has to go, so be it. Morey's already begun to put out feelers to gauge other teams' interest in trading for Simmons, and no surprise, what he's asking for early in return for the three-time All-Star is not cheap. Sources with knowledge of the trade talks between the Sixers and the Raptors said that Morey was asking for an All-Star return at the very least. The package they wanted from the Raptors for Simmons was Kyle Lowry, Fred VanVleet, OG Anunoby, and the number 4 overall draft pick. And not surprisingly, Toronto said, bye-bye. No, really? Get out of here with that. So that rejection aside, interest across the league in Simmons does remain high. He'll be 25 this month, was an All-NBA team member back in 2019-20. He's a 2-time All-Defensive First Team member and a Rookie of the Year award winner. He's also under contract through 2025, making him the rare type of superstar talent that you usually don't see become available at an attainable price at this juncture of his career. There's a source close to the situation that says Miami, I don't see Toronto in there anymore, but Miami and Washington might be landing spots. Though, to me, the Wizards are only in play if Bradley Beal decides that it's time to turn the page and move on from the only team he ever played for. So far, Bradley Beal has said all the right things. He wants to stay in Washington, but who knows if that will change now that Westbrook is gone. Who knows? Then again, Beal stayed put when they got rid of John Wall, so who knows? Look, I wasn't going to be surprised if Ben got traded tonight during the draft. Stranger trades have happened on draft night, as we all know.
Say that 5 times fast.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. Like I said, running that energy. Either way, though, and it's likely that he won't be. So, but either way, this to me is the offseason storyline I'm going to be keeping an eye on, both as a Sixer fan and as an analyst for this show.
Yeah,
you know what?
I'm. Go ahead,
Go
Anthony.
ahead, man. Go ahead.
No, I'm very interested to see the trajectory of Ben Simmons. Anthony was talking about how Lonzo Ball, how Kyle Kuzma needed to get out of LA. As of right now, if Ben Simmons plays another game in Philadelphia, he is going to be the worst for wear, so to speak.
Especially with that.
We have a lot to talk about after this, including a little bit of a surprise, and I'll get to that in a minute. Let me quickly talk about 2 restricted free agents on the market this year. Restricted free agents don't usually get their offers matched because the team that wants them really does want them, or there's just not enough interest. But I do see the possibility, at least, of one player. Let's talk about John Collins for a second. I think he's the best free agent on the market, bar none, even bigger than Kyle Lowry. But he is a restricted free agent, which is why he's not getting too much of the play. He averaged 17.6 points and 7.4 rebounds a game, but he had a reduced role last year. He's really a number 2 guy and really should be the go-to guy to Trae Young, but you have to give shots to Bogdan Bogdanovic and to Danilo Gallinari. The Atlanta Hawks went all or nothing last year, and after they fired their head coach and got in Nate McMillan, they were wonderful, and they ended up making it to the 6th game of the Eastern Conference Finals, where they went toe-to-toe with the defending champs for a while, with the new champs for a while there. Collins provides so much depth for any team that's going to get him, but his role is probably going to be with the Hawks. He declined a $90 million contract and is probably going to get a max deal this summer. Atlanta has such a great nucleus. Trae Young, 22, Kevin Huerter, 22, John Collins, 23, DeAndre Hunter, 23. It's a good time to be a basketball fan in Atlanta, and I don't see that changing. However, I do think the Pelicans are going to probably lose Lonzo Ball. I think Lonzo has some interest from teams out there. Shams Charania from The Athletic, Yahoo, and a bunch of different places said today that 3 teams have interest in Ball. The Bulls, who have had their interest back since this past trade deadline. But now Toronto has interest in Lonzo Ball, probably for Kyle Lowry protection if he doesn't come back. But the most interesting fit of them all is the Boston Celtics. I would like to see how Lonzo would do getting into 2 high-level players like Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. I think that team could go somewhere. Lonzo doesn't have the injury history of Kemba Walker. Sorry, Kemba, we love you, but I love you, but you're just not healthy. And Lonzo's probably going to get a deal in the 20s this year. He could easily go 5 years, $100 million. And as much as the Thunder really want to get Zion championships and wins this season, I don't know if that's going to happen really with Lonzo. So I think Lonzo is going to move on. And I think as a restricted free agent, I think the high price is going to be high for them. Guys, the Knicks ended up making that second pick anyway with the Clippers number 25 pick. I'll get the details in a second. If you want to mention something quick, it's Quentin Grimes out of Houston that's going to be coming to this team. I loved this guy in college, and I think he does fit a role. Guys, the Knicks did want depth, but they wanted to get some value out of this, and they do end up making their second first-round pick. Just not where we thought they would. But let's talk about Quentin Grimes for a second before we move on to the Nets picks.
Yeah, this is interesting. I mean, if this is the guy, I mean, you're taking a guy who has an established collegiate resume. I mean, he's a junior coming out of Houston. A lot of NBA player personnel guys thought he was the best player at the combine. Showed a little more off the dribble than a lot of people thought he had. You know, I mean, we all know he put up numbers at Houston. Not the best athlete, not the best ball handler, but he can make shots. So a lot of people mocked him going late first round, and that's kind of where he ended up. Comes out of a solid system in Houston where he's been well coached. You don't know if he's necessarily does anything special, but I mean, across the board, he does almost everything you need at the NBA level, but he can shoot. And as we all know, shooting is a skill that translates. Mentally tough kid, not a great defender, but he won't be a liability. So this is the type of pick, guys, that I think we were looking for the Knicks to bring over. So it's kind of nice to see that at the end of the day, after everything, shook itself out, that they got a guy like this. And I think this is a good pick for them, and I think he'll make. I think he can make the roster. He's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
Trade, by the way, guys, Keon Johnson, of course, will not stay with the Knicks. They're trading 21 to the Clippers, so they're going to trade Keon Johnson to the Clippers, and they'll get back that 25 pick, which is Quentin Grimes, and a future second-round pick.
Okay.
So it's going to be very interesting how this rest of the draft plays out. Right, all the trades with the local teams, just exactly how we like it, Anthony.
Yeah, right. I mean, look, but Quentin Grimes, you got his he's obviously get the college experience, 17 and a half points per game, ranked third in AAC, led him in 3-point shooting. I mean, like we said, like Jay said, the shooting translates, and I think about. If the Knicks can make him into, I'm talking about the offensive side, for his shooting. If he could be a pure shooter that the Knicks desperately need, like an Allen Houston, baby, this would be a big win for the Knicks moving forward. But like I said, I mean, it's a good pick. He's a full guard. Again, another plug-in player that can play both positions. But they got their shooter. I think that's the most important thing. They got a guy who can at least space the floor. It's going to be interesting to see what they do the rest of the draft. They still have number 32. They haven't traded that just yet, as we'll talk as we speak. It's been a whirlwind first round as far as the Knicks are concerned. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do with that number 32 pick and the subsequent picks that they have in the rest of the way. But they get a good guard, they get a guy who can defend, but a knockdown shooter. So I think he's going to be somebody that's going to be able to contribute to the Knicks right away, particularly since outside shooting was such a weak spot for the team, and they're not going to have. They're more likely not going to have Reggie Bullock next season. So already you have a guard who can come in and have lots of spot in the rotation available right now as we speak. Knicks only have 7 guys on contract going into next season, so they got a lot of space and a lot of spots that they need to fill before late October when the season's going to start. So they got a long way to go.
I do think, though, with Grimes, you get somebody who has had such a career. He's only played he only played 2 years in Houston after being in Kansas in Bill's Self system, where he didn't learn too much because he basically left almost immediately. But he was a very good high school player. He was Mr. Texas, and you could say that's something also Chris Bosh, De'Aaron Fox, and Marcus Smart did. He had so much immense talent, which is why he shined so much in Houston and Conference USA, or the AAC, I'm sorry. You can see that he didn't know where to put that talent, which is why he needed the step down and then really became a good college basketball player. He was really good at Houston. He really has resurrected his draft stock into something where he can be a good rotation player. And as we said, that's your 3-and-D guy that really, really fits well in the Thibodeau system. He went from 34% in his 1 year in Kansas to 32.6% in 1920 in Houston. And now he almost shoots 40% from 3-point. He also improved his free throw percentage by over 12%. So that is and you learn over good coaches. You learn from Bill Self. You learn from Ralph Sampson. He can stay in front of opposing players and absolutely is terrific at contesting shots. I asked earlier with Keon Johnson, who of course is not a Knick anymore because why not, if he could play 20 minutes a game and not piss off Tom Thibodeau enough to take him out. I know Grimes is not going to do that. I have a good feeling Grimes is not going to do that. Not a great athlete. I don't like the fact that he's not that great of an athlete. That is not fast at all, but 3-and-D guys don't have to be that. And that's one of the really good things about Grimes fitting in this system, guys.
Yeah, and Rabbi, the thing, that you kind of touched on that, like, I think is what makes him a guy who will be a good fit for a team run by Thibodeau is this is a guy who, came in, as a lead guard, a guy who always had the ball in his hands, and a 5-star prospect who really got humbled, and this is a guy who completely changed his game, reinvented himself, showed, the work ethic that you need, and a guy who has the capacity to look himself in the mirror and go, okay, I need to change my game if I'm going to not only be able to play at a high level in college, but I'm going to get to the next level. And I think a guy who's gone through something like that has come out the other side. That's some maturity. And I think, you're a third-year player. You've gone through the ringer, come out the other side, and made yourself into a guy who fits not only what the NBA overall is looking for, but as you guys said, a need for the Knicks. Combo guard, can D up 3 positions, can knock it down from beyond the arc, won't be selfish, will do what it needs to be done to, make himself useful to Tom Thibodeau, and become the valuable type of role player that you're looking for from a guy that you pick at this point in the draft. Because as you said, Rabbi, at this point, you're not looking for stars. You're looking for somebody who's going to be a solid rotation player and fit and fill a need. And he does this. I got to tell you, as much as I hated the initial pick by the Knicks, the fact that it sorted itself out this way, I got to give the Knicks front office props. This is the pick the type of guy we wanted for the Knicks originally, and I'm glad they wound up like this.
And I think the pick at 32 really helps them make one of those picks expendable. And again, as much as I hate doing the Sam Presti way of doing things and stockpiling picks forever and ever and ever and ever and not knowing when you're actually going to use them,
Right.
although the process did eventually work for that in Philadelphia, Jay, I do think that I do think that this is a good pick. I would have liked to see them take a little more depth, and I hope they keep that pick at 32. And if you think we're staying on the air for pick number 32, you're kidding yourselves.
We're not. I'll tell you this.
We're barely on the air for number 29. For
Yeah,
the
we
Nets,
have lives. We have lives, people. Okay, as much as we love to talk sports, we do have lives, ladies and gentlemen. We do have to go off the air at some point.
Yeah, and we will go off the air once the second pick for the Nets comes in. So hopefully, that doesn't take too much longer. Pick it.
And guys, while we wait for the Nets pick at number 27, which seems like it's forever, and it's coming out now. And guys, I will mention this pick when we get it, and then be prepared to talk. Let's see. All of our picks for the Nets are still on the board, by the way.
Yep.
So this is going to be very interesting. And Cam Thomas from LSU is the pick. Had some lottery potential in this draft, and you can see I think he might be the last player in attendance from the green room, although I think the guy from Spain is still there. Guys, Cam Thomas, good pick. 1 year out of the SEC at LSU. He could provide some things. I think we were asking for a guard that could give some good backup minutes, and I think Cam Thomas is it.
Anthony, you're the Nets fan. I'm going to let you lead this one.
Well, while he looks at that, do you want to go on here?
No. I mean, with Cam Thomas, I think he just comes into a position where he does give the Nets some depth, but you look at it like this, he's coming into a team that he doesn't have to be the foundation. He doesn't have to be a star in the making. He can come in. He can learn how to play off the bench. But also, you got to think about it like this. Spencer Dinwiddie's a free agent, so that's a point guard. That's more likely he's going to be moving on. And we were watching the draft coverage. They just talked about the potential, contract extensions for the three superstars, potentially over $500 million for extensions if you wanted to extend all three guys, Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. But keep in mind, they've missed more games this season. They've played together combined if you count the last 2 years. So this is a great pick. 23 points a game for LSU. He's a scorer. He's a volume scorer. And he gives the Nets another viable offensive option off the bench. And we saw that was a bit of an issue when Kevin Durant, which is exactly why Kevin Durant played all 48 minutes late in that second round series. He just couldn't come off the court because the Nets didn't have anywhere else to go to, particularly where James Harden was not 100%. So now this kind of gives them a little bit of wiggle room as far as Steve Nash rotations is concerned. And a guy who come in, you know what, he doesn't have to create. He can actually just come in and be what Emmanuel quickly is to the Knicks. A guy who comes in, he can score in volumes, can get hot really fast, and can give you a decent 15, 20 points a game on a given night, come off the bench and play in spot minutes.
Yeah, I mean, this is an interesting pick. Cam Thomas strikes me as a little bit like somebody who's already sitting on that roster, and that's Kyrie Irving. There are some similarities, guys, if you look at it. What's the interesting thing for me is that the Athletics' John Hollinger had Thomas mock drafted here for Brooklyn. Here's the stuff that's a knock on him. Not the biggest dude, not a good athlete, doesn't put pressure on the rim, doesn't play any defense. The guy has yet to find a shot he doesn't like, and he's going to have to rein that in and learn to be a little more efficient. So my concern is that he's coming to the Nets, and he's going to be sitting on the bench watching a guy in Kyrie Irving who plays just like he does now, and that may not be a good thing for this kid to emulate. So it'll be interesting.
If he's less of a head case than Kyrie Irving, it's already a win.
That is true. That is definitely true. This is a guy who can be a microwave type of player coming off the bench. He does have that scoring ability. So like I said, he can catch and shoot. He's comfortable running off screens and dribble handoffs, can get to his spot off the bounce, and he can pull up from anywhere. So, the problem is that outside of putting the ball in the bucket, the rest of his game is very much underdeveloped, can be a bit of a black hole on offense, misses simple reads, which, is something to be concerned about considering the amount of attention he receives coming off a screen or did at LSU. His off-ball defense is atrocious, and he seems to lose focus on that end, and he doesn't have great defensive tools to begin with. So you got to wonder, if the juice on offense is worth the squeeze where he doesn't give you what he doesn't give you on the other side of the ball. Can he improve upon these weaknesses and become more than just a one-dimensional player? That's going to be the thing to watch for me with this pick. I understand it, to a certain extent. He's Kyrie light. He's potentially Kyrie 2.0. And if you got a guy like Kyrie who seems to constantly be injury prone, whether it's basketball related or not basketball related, there are stretches where he's not available, and to be able to plug in a guy who has a similar game, I kind of get the appeal. But you got to hope that he becomes a little more. There's parts of his game that are the weaknesses that I call out. You want to see him improve upon those because of all he is a Kyrie clone. I don't know if at the end of the day the juice is completely worth the squeeze. If he's the guy you're going to slot in when Kyrie goes down or is not available for stretches.
I'm going to hate to say this, but being a Kyrie clone is not as bad as you think on the floor, because the skills that Kyrie Irving possesses as a point guard, the passes that he still makes, and he has almost been in the league for almost close to a decade now, is unmatched. And I think when he's on the floor, when he's healthy, when he's 100%, which is like 10 games during a season, there's no one more that you want to learn at the feet from. His basketball IQ is very much there. And that helps a lot. You can learn from a guy who has made a ton of all-star teams. And also he doesn't play defense, by the way, perfect for the Nets. But I think the way he plays basketball, as he picks up from the bounce, he has a very good mid-range game. He's consistent. He loves a step back. He has, again, yes, he is a black hole defensively. He's a black hole
offensively.
He's a black hole offensively at times, but if you need a special, first of all, his job is going to be eat up minutes. Is going to be to give you effective minutes on the court. That's all he's going to be there for, at least until injuries happen. Then we'll talk a little bit more. But for a number 27 pick, again, who dominated college, who I don't know if any of those skills are transferable from the SEC to what is going to be a championship contender. We'll see what happens, but I don't dislike this pick. I don't dislike this pick at all. It's fine for where the pick is, guys, and there's a lot of upside here. You could do worse.
I like the pick because he's going to a team that's in win now mode, so there's no pressure on him to be a foundation player. Also, we call him a microwave scorer. For where he's coming in and the team he's coming into, if he could be like the microwave and Vinnie Johnson and give the Nets quality minutes and some scoring off the bench, it's a great pick without question. And like I said, Kyrie Irving, hey, look, if he's less of a head case than Kyrie Irving, you're already one step ahead. But if he can play like Kyrie Irving on the court offensively, maybe learn a few tips, that'll go a long way as well. Like I said, I think it's a good solid pick. I think Steve Nash is the kind of the coach and personality that can maybe get him to kind of buy in, kind of reel in a little bit. Also, you just keep this in mind that the Nets, as an organization, they are in championship or bust mode. So he's going to be called on to contribute right away. He just doesn't have to be the 23-point a game scorer that he was at LSU. He can come in, get some quality minutes, and you know what? He may get the green light to jack up some shots from time to time, particularly when you know the Nets are a team that plays up-tempo and play Kevin Durant at the 5 very often and tend to play small.
I see a lot of Jordan Clarkson possibly in this pick. I see a lot of Buddy Hield possibly in this pick. Buddy Hield especially, guy who scored so much in college, but lacks a lot of things that you need in the NBA. He could be a really good pick for a team like the Sacramento Kings, who are going to need scores, for teams that focus primarily on beating you 121 to 120 to 119. But I like this package. I like that you're getting a guy who can be a heat check guy. And I think especially if you're going to need 4 or 5 games to be a heat check guy, especially because the guy who was paid 4 years, $70 million to be the heat check guy on this team couldn't hit the side of a barn pretty much in an entire series of Joe Harris. Maybe getting a heat check guy at a smaller ability is good. Anthony, I know you've said before, if you had all those open looks, you would probably be worth 4 years, $70 million. Yeah.
Well, this is why I played football, not basketball, because I know I can't make those shots. But when you get paid $70 million, that's your job. And Joe Harris could not hit the side of Atlantic Avenue Mall if the basket was literally in front of target. That's how bad he was in that second round series. And look, I don't know what happened. Maybe it was just one of those things where shooters just go into slumps. And when you try to shoot your way out, you just make things worse. And Joe Harris is a post pro. He's a shooter. But when you have the easiest job in the world, it's just knock down open looks because you play with 3 All-Stars and you can't get that done. Yeah, that's going to have a lot of net fans question that big contract extension you received last season.
Yeah, I do like, though, the fact that you did reference Target over at Atlantic Terminal. I was thinking more the Stop and Shop across the street, or possibly the Chick-fil-A on the other side of Atlantic Avenue. But I think this Nets team has a lot of potential. Like I said before, and we'll say it again because we're stalling for time. The Nets make the most, at least this past season, out of who they got. I don't know if they got the best effort of them in the series against the Celtics and especially against the Bucks, but they make the best out of a lineup of whether it be young guys who they're trying to fit in the system or old guys who they can kind of rejuvenate in the mold of Blake Griffin and the mold of Jeff Green. I think both of these types of situations fit perfectly for the Nets, guys. And take us home on this before we finally talk about that 29th pick.
Here's my concern here, guys, is that, you know, the Nets traded Landry Shamet, who I saw in Philly, solid 3-point shooter, guy who's a 40% knockdown shooter from beyond the arc. You sent him to Phoenix to get the 29th pick, and you got Devin Carter back. So I was hoping that at least with the first pick that the Nets would look to replace Shamet's shooting. The fact that they didn't, I'm really hoping that they get it here. I mean, Phoenix is listed as the pick, but we know that this pick is going to the Nets once this trade becomes official. Next week when offseason starts and all trades done tonight become official and players change teams. So it'll be interesting to see who the pick here is, if they go with someone who is a shooter who can replace what they lost in the trading Shamet.
Well, Landry Shamet just didn't have enough time on that team while they were trying to fit in people who they were buying. Blake Griffin got the time. Jeff Green got the time. Hell, in his games before he retired, LaMarcus Aldridge got the time on the court. Shamet was only allowed to really go in 11 to 12 minute bursts, and that's a problem. Okay, North Carolina guy, Jay. Day'Ron Sharpe is the pick at number 29.
I tell you, this is very interesting because, believe it or not, he actually fills a need for the Nets. I mean, we talked about, everybody, poo-poos, the big man until you need one come the playoffs. I like this pick for the Nets. I really do.
So do I.
Hands down. Okay. Day'Ron Sharpe is a big man. He has the best feet. He's a great passer, both out of the high and the low post. He's got another trait that transitions really well to the NBA from college, and that's rebounding, especially on the offensive glass. He's the reason why, UNC led the nation in offensive rebounding and was top 5 in second chance offense. You can run offense through him because of his ability to see the floor and hit both cutters and guys who are going to the corner for the corner three. He can roll to the rim as a dunker. He can switch on a ball screen. He's going to be a Clint Capella, Rudy Gobert type of player in terms of the offense. Here's a guy who there was concern about his physical shape coming out of North Carolina, but what I'm hearing is that he's really gotten into decent shape. And this is a guy who has a great skill set as a post player. I think this is a fantastic pick for them. Ironically enough, guys, John Hollinger of The Athletic actually had Day'Ron Sharpe going to Phoenix at this slot. This guy, I think obviously he's not going to play 30 odd minutes a night on this team, but this is a guy who can give you that 20 to 25 minutes off the bench and be the big that the Nets are going to need, depending on the matchups that they're going to run into. It's a great pick. I agree with it 100%. I like it. I really do. I think this is what I call a guy who is a great fit. You drafted for need. Ironically enough, guys, the Athletics NBA staff mocked Day'Ron Sharpe to the Nets as well, but at 27. So there were some people who were hearing some things that this guy was eventually going to end up with the Nets. I can't say enough about it. I was a big fan of his in college. I like him as a player. I like him as a dude. He comes across as a really good guy. Was very unselfish. He came in as a 5-star pick, and he could have, made a big deal about, wanting the ball all the time and playing the minutes, but, he accepted the role in terms of the 4 big rotation that Roy Williams had going on. It's a great pick. The Nets are really going to like what Day'Ron Sharpe's going to give them.
And he gives them rim protection, something the Nets didn't basically traded away when they traded away Jared Allen last season. It was pretty much forced to play small the rest of the season. DeAndre Jordan is pretty much a relic at this point. I mean, he's not a full-time starter. So getting a young athletic big who can protect the rim, I think it's a big win.
Yeah, I totally agree, guys. This has been a very, very interesting night, but unfortunately, all good things must come to an end, and it comes to an end right now. Goodbye, guys. Now go play outside or something, or go to bed. For Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, I'm Steven Rabinowitz. We have social media, facebook.com/onthesportslines to watch us live, youtube.com/onthesportslines for our vast archive, ONTH Sportslines on the Twitter handle thingy, and you'll find the link to this show very soon. Until next time, if there is one. Well, you know what? There will be. Spoiler alert.
There will be.
Again, guys, this has been damn well fun. Mm-hmm. We'll talk soon. Good night.
Have a good night, everybody.
Good night, everyone.